Susan or Elizabeth?
Susie.
S-U-S lady. Schedule. This is the one I know.
And he was very upset because
I came out of the house today on my moped.
The cost of going to college is sending a lot of students into financial shock. Budget cuts by the Reagan administration have reduced financial aid, while tuition, room and board, and books have continued to climb. Students are scrambling to find ways to pay their bills. Many have part-time jobs in addition to a scholarship or grant. For most state-supported schools, tuition has not risen as fast as housing and books. The combination is definitely harder on kids today than, say, 5 years ago.
If there are not state and federal funds and private funds from the university to send them to school, they may be looking at dropping in and out of college, going a year, working a year and saving, and then going another year. Or they may be looking at enrolling just part-time.
Over 3,000 students at Central State University have some kind of financial aid. But even with that help, they say it's gotten really tough to keep up.
I work here at school, which is part of my grant. It's a work-study program. And then also I have to work during the summer and try to save some money to help me through the year.
A lot of the people I know have to work most of the time, and it's hard to try to keep up with your schoolwork and everything and, you know, make a living too.
I'd say it's extremely difficult because you have to carry a certain amount of workload plus your living expenses. And books, oh, you know, it's unreal, $20 a book. You know, and some classes have 2 books, so you know you're talking $150 for books.
As for the future, students may have even harder times ahead if the Reagan administration continues on its path towards a balanced budget. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at Central State University. A potentially dangerous gas explosion was averted this morning. About 9:15, Jamie Liggins and her 2 children were pulling out of the Howard Johnson's parking lot at 53rd and Lincoln when her brakes failed. The car gained momentum, rolled down the hill, and knocked down a high-pressure gas meter. Liggins jumped out of her car with one of her children, while Howard Johnson's employee pulled the other child to safety. Natural gas began escaping, which resulted in the evacuation of motel guests and 2 nearby homes. Police and firemen blocked off the area, afraid any spark might ignite the gas. An hour and a half later, OG&E workmen had successfully shut off the gas line to the meter. No major injuries resulted from the incident, and no further complications are anticipated at this time. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at the Howard Johnson's Motel.
3 men were seriously burned when a motor they were working on apparently filled with natural gas and exploded. The fire was extinguished quickly, but the men were standing right over the motor when it blew up. A Newcastle pharmacist was called to administer first aid.
And there was, they had started working on them as far as they could go. They, didn't have any liquids left at all. And there was 3 people that had been burned, that had been working the well. Looked like a crew that had been cleaning out a well. And the fire was still going, and on all 3 people, their arms was burned to the point where the top layer of skin was peeling off, and their chest was burned, and their back and their face. Their hair was burned about 20% of the way through it.
The 3 have been identified as 47-year-old Ray Stepp, 29-year-old Melvin Humphreys, and 26-year-old Samuel Saunders. They were listed in serious condition at the Baptist Burn Center. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Newcastle.
What started off as a building moratorium on the city's northeast side has now changed its name to the Northeast Gateway Conservation Project. Although the name has changed, the purpose is still the same, to preserve the National Cowboy Hall of Fame in the area immediately around it. Now homeowners and businesses can build here, but only under some tough restrictions. This map shows the Northeast Gateway Urban Conservation District outlined by the City Council, bounded on the north by Northeast 67th Street and on the south by Northeast 50th, the east by Interstate 35 and west by Kelly Avenue. Homes and businesses in this section of town are to follow tougher building codes, too numerous to mention all. Some rules include no flashing signs for businesses. Homes facing a public street must be made of stone in the front. No car repair on the front lawns will be allowed, and the use of any loudspeaker system must be approved. Millwood School is in the Conservation District. The superintendent says the school is planning some construction, but sees no problem with the tougher codes.
Well, as far as the school is concerned, I think some basic protective restrictions were given us, were assured to not cause us undue expense at making any changes. And of course, we always have to abide by building codes, which are pretty stringent to start with.
If you live in the Conservation District and want more information, contact City Hall. Ed Stewart, Action 4, Northeast Oklahoma City.
If you've been paying any attention to the types of video games at restaurants, arcades, and in your neighbors' homes, you probably know that electronic space games are taking the country by storm. They have replaced pinball machines with television screens, replacing the flashing lights with blinking rockets and zooming asteroids, and ringing bells with electronic bloops. The computerized games have become so popular because computers are becoming economical. You plug them into your television set, slip in a disc, and your home becomes a ship for warding off alien spacecraft, whose speed can be controlled according to the player's ability. Consequently, a lot of kids are becoming quite good, using a screen as their battlefield and a joystick as their weapon.
Like, if you can shoot, if you can move this without looking at this stick, and you don't get nervous.
It's just something that, you don't always have someone there. You don't really catch any, no one ever teaches you anything if you lose, because you don't lose against somebody, you just lose against the machine.
The proficiency being developed has led to Space Invader tournaments all across the country, like the one in Oklahoma City today. They attract figures like former astronaut Gordon Cooper. Cooper is encouraged by the computer's growing popularity. He says they will have more and more to do with the country's lifestyle.
And I think that it's showing and teaching people that computers are really not dangerous. They're really a very valuable tool, and they can aid you to do things in a time period that it would be impossible to do if you had to calculate things out or to electronically control things without the aid of them.
Computer proponents say that this is probably the best way for computers to get into the American public. Introduce it as a game that people can get their hands on and enjoy. Then they realize that computers are something that they can live with. It's not like the game where you just search out and destroy. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4, at the Space Invaders tournament at Northwest Hilton Inn. Got the little rascal.
That's good. Okay. They didn't lay off according to seniority. We've got there's people in there today that's working, that's got less than 60 days seniority with the company. I've got 17 years. What do I do? What do my family do?
One item that's already been cleared up is that Governor Nigh will not be able to appoint new commissioners to replace those who have resigned. Instead, money will come from the state election board to give to those counties so they can hold special elections. Well, what's left for lawmakers to do? Well, basically, they'll have two big items to consider. One is that any commissioner who pleads guilty of a crime won't be able to stay in office. And if he turns state evidence, he won't be able to receive immunity from prosecution. Lawmakers have decided not to take up the issue of retirement pay for commissioners. They're waiting for a legal opinion on that one. And they've decided not to get into the issue of lease purchasing agreements. They're a little bit too complicated. In fact, there are a number of issues they're not addressing right now. They'll wait until January when they come back for their regular session. And judging from the way the county commissioner scandal has been going, there will be plenty to talk about then, too. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the state capitol.
There are 126,818 people who could have voted in yesterday's District 3 Oklahoma County Commissioners election, but poll workers saw less than 10% of those people come in and cast their ballots. Unofficial results show that Charlie Swinton was the winner of the Democrats with 1,795 votes, and Fred Snyder for the Republicans with 2,596 votes. So at first glance, one would think voter apathy kept people at home, especially since the county commissioner corruption probe has been a daily topic of conversation for months. We talked with some people about the low voter turnout.
Well, my wife and I voted, but we didn't know whether we was voting for the right man or not because we didn't have enough information.
I don't think it was publicized enough.
Well, the only thing I can figure is perhaps people just didn't feel like it was important enough to get out and bother about voting.
Well, was there an election yesterday? I hadn't heard about it.
Honestly, I'm embarrassed of my own apathy because I felt like I was not informed enough or there was not enough campaigning done by each of the candidates.
So the reaction we got from most people is sure, they want to do something about corruption in county government, and they want to make sure the right people are elected into the county commissioners' offices. But first, they at least have to know about the candidates and at least know about the elections themselves. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
This week, choice slaughter steers are selling for about $67.50 a 100 pounds. Last year, about this time, they were selling for approximately $73.25 a 100 pounds. Comparing the figures, you can see that live cattle prices are down considerably.
It's a struggle. Many of us have had a hard time of it. In the last 5 years, you hope maybe out of 5 years, possibly that maybe you can make a profit. So in the last year and a half to 2 years, most cattlemen haven't done very well.
Mike Brooks is a rancher near Ringling in south central Oklahoma. What do you feel can be done to increase live cattle prices?
Hopefully this next year that the legislature will pass a 25% checkoff for the cattlemen so that they can develop some money sources so they can let the American public know the quality of their product and how good a buy that it actually is.
Of course, a lack of promotion can't be blamed entirely for the slump. High interest rates have been and still are a burden to many cattlemen. Ben McCain, Action 4 at the Oklahoma National Stockyards.
The Moore City Council wants to save some money, so next Tuesday night they'll be voting on whether to start a new part-time volunteer fire department. Well, firemen in the city are upset about this. They say the city's safety will be at stake.
The problem, as I see it, is that the manpower provided to us will not be on a professional basis. There will not be full-time firefighters, and this is what I'm concerned with, that if I've got somebody working with me, I want them there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't want people coming in that it's going to take a long time to train them and not sure if they show up after they're called.
Tonight, firemen and interested citizens met to distribute pamphlets throughout the city and get people to sign a petition asking the city council to reject the proposed plan. Manis says they'd rather see 3 full-time firemen hired than 30 reserves. Carol Lambert, Action 4 in Moore, Oklahoma. Moore fireman John Parker's doing some last-minute preparation for the night city council meeting. To date, over 2,000 residents in Moore have signed a petition asking the city council to reject a proposed reserve firefighters program. Parker will present the petitions to the city council and will then address several issues which the petitioners are protesting.
We feel that the money they're going to be spending on this reserve program is not in the best interest of the citizens. We feel that the tax dollar that the citizen spends on the fire protection, that the citizens deserve to have a full-time fire department. We feel that the reserve firefighters, if they're on duty, if they respond to a call, will not be as well qualified as full-time firefighters.
Parker also attacks the proposal on the grounds that it will not save money for the city or citizens in Moore on a long-term basis. Parker says firemen and concerned citizens will be in full force at the city council meeting tonight to air their opposition to the proposal. And as to whether Moore will have reserve firefighters in the future, we'll have that outcome for you on tonight's update. Carol Lambert, Action 4 in Moore.
It began at 10 p.m. when Emma Poplin called the police to file an assault and battery complaint against her ex-husband, Harold. When the police ran a routine check on the man, they found an outstanding felony warrant. So 2 officers returned to the ex-wife's home to find his whereabouts. 29-year-old Harold Poplin was there, hiding in the backyard. When officers Fred Bowen and Jack Lane approached him, he pulled a knife and began swinging at Lane. According to a police spokesman, Officer Fred Bowen told Poplin to drop the weapon, but he continued his attack on Lane, leaving the officer no other alternative than to shoot. Less than 2 hours later, shortly before midnight, 29-year-old Harold Poplin was dead from a shot in the upper abdomen. Officer Fred Bowen has been suspended, pending investigation. Sherry Sellers, Action 4, South Oklahoma City.
I have urged them, I've written them, and I've asked them both to resign effective immediately. Under the law, there is nothing that I can do immediately to suspend them from office.
Blaine County Commissioners Monty Compton and Robert Pettigrew, who are both implemented in the kickback scandal, wanted their resignations to become effective in October. But since Governor Nigh has put the pressure on, Compton gave up his office today. In Watonga, County road worker Snooky Grove showed up for work this morning, even though he didn't have to. Compton told him and his co-workers they could stay home if they wanted. He wasn't their boss any longer. Grove and the others want to work and finish several road and bridge projects that are underway. The problem now is that there's no one in their district to dish out the money.
I don't know, it kind of puts pressure because there's no boss. We really don't know what to really do. I mean, it's just we've got a job. We know what to do. I mean, he's made lists, things that he's promised the people to do, and we're going to try and do all of it if we possibly can until we get a new commissioner appointed or somebody.
Snooky says he hopes someone's put in charge by the end of the month because that's when he gets paid. Well, as it stands now, Governor Nigh will have to wait until Commissioner Pettigrew formally resigns before he can make an interim appointment. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at the state capitol.
John Tharp, the driver of a Turner Brothers semi-truck, tried to cross railroad tracks when the truck was hit by a train, causing 17 cars from the Santa Fe train to derail. The truck driver suffered minor injuries, as did James Taylor, who was driving the train. Both men were taken to Edmond Memorial Hospital. Officials estimate the train was traveling at about 50 miles per hour at the time of impact. There were no railroad crossing warning signals on the tracks, and authorities say normally a semi-truck would not travel over tracks that don't have warning lights. Some of the derailed cars contain highly flammable chemicals such as sodium hydroxide, but the situation was under control.
Been much worse. We did not have any fires involved other than one small fire in the engine, which was contained as soon as we got here. We do have some flammable tank cars that are further back in the train that were not damaged, and the only materials we have involved are dry caustic materials. They are hazardous materials, and we are getting what information we can on them at this time.
Officials say the initial damage estimate is expected to reach $1 million. Ed Stewart, Action 4 north of Edmond.
For those OU fans who traveled many miles to the game today, flying was easier and just as safe. Over 150 private planes landed at Westheimer Field this morning with ease, accuracy, and of course, OU football pennants. Just as in the past, a temporary air traffic control tower was opened at Westheimer, manned by controllers from Wiley Post and Will Rogers. Since the air traffic controller strike has put a crunch on control towers everywhere, I asked FFA Supervisor Norm Scroggins if Westheimer's needs were difficult to arrange.
I'm the only one from Will Rogers, I might add, in the RAPCON, and we have 3 here from Wiley Post, the chief, Mr. McKissick, and 2 of the people from there. So, again, sharing our resources in this area is not too taxing on us.
Since the airways are under close scrutiny by everyone these days, the FAA took an extra safety measure today. 4 ground inspectors were on duty to make sure all pilots were A-OK to fly after the game. Just as the OU football team doesn't want to make any mistakes this season, Westheimer Field will aim for the same. A temporary control tower will be open every home game to guide OU fans to safe airways in the skies. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at Westheimer Field.
Today was the first day of the hearings, with William Stratton of PSO saying that less than $20 million of the $140 million request would be used to finance Black Fox. Stratton said the utility has an obligation to fulfill the energy needs of its people. He pointed out that PSO hasn't had a rate increase in 4 years and that Black Fox is needed. But several consumers showed up, some bringing utility bills with them, and said that Black Fox is just another burden they simply can't bear. Because the hearing concerned Black Fox and there have been reports of protests in the past, security was brought in, but not needed. Most of the people opposing the rate hike were older and on low incomes.
Low income and moderate income people, 90% of them or more on fixed incomes. Their income will not increase. But if these bills increase, we will be cut short of something we need.
They want more and more and more. They want the Black Fox nuclear plant, and they want to add to our bill to pay for it. And I have enough trouble with bills now. I have to work nights to support myself.
When they build a new plant, then they're gonna put in extra electricity. But why should they take the pennies off of us?
So it's another case of the consumer versus the big company. Who will win probably won't be known until around mid-December. The hearings will continue for the next 6 weeks. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the Corporation Commission.
The woman living alone in this house. The suspect was attempting to get in the window, and the lady shot him through the window. He left the window and came back again, and she shot him again. And he stumbled down the street and back to where he was found over here on the ground across the street.
There are approximately 6,000 pecan growers in Oklahoma. Gordon Couch has an orchard near Luther in Oklahoma County. Couch is the executive director of the Oklahoma Pecan Commission. He says pecan producers are optimistic about this year's crop.
Well, the prospects right now, Ben, are looking real good. Our set was excellent this spring. Of course, what counts is what we get in the bag, you might say. But if everything holds, we're going to have one of the best crops we've had in a number of years.
A good crop will be beneficial for consumers as well. We should be able to buy large select pecans for approximately $1.75 a pound. Couch says there are a lot of people concerned about this crop.
Because they like their pecans, and a pecan is an excellent nut to put in all types of dishes. And many cooks and many homemakers use pecans in their cooking, and I think there will be adequate supplies for them too this year.
Last year there was a shortage of pecans across the country, mainly because of the severe drought. Well, with the expectations of a good pecan crop, pecan eaters should be able to get all the pecan pie they want this year. Ben McCain, Action 4, near Luther in Oklahoma County.
All over that. And the length. That's hot. A little bit more. Well, we better get some more of this stuff right here.
The food's some of the best the caterers had to offer, but that doesn't account for the huge turnout at the Tom Howell household. What does is the welterweight title fight between Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearn. It's brought here through the courtesy and a $15 additional fee from View, the subscription television system.
He ate you throw a hell of a party, that's all I have to say.
Eating and drinking beer in a comfortable living room may not be the same as Caesar's Palace, but it's probably a lot better than the $25 hardback seats at the Lloyd Noble Arena in Norman, particularly if your guests throw a little into the kitty to cover the additional expense. The rest of us will just have to sit through this newscast while the fight is in mid-fury. Ted Brown, Action 4.